Welcome to Presidential Fight Club, the show that answers the question, if all 44 presidents fought each other one-on-one, who would win? Hosted by two history professors who have too much time on their hands, Scott Rank and James Early. Welcome to the second fight in the second round of the Western Regional Presidential Fight Club. There you go. That's 4 sublevels right there to tell you where we are. We have a competition between two generals in this fight, and let's see what being a master strategist does for you in the ring. Zachary Taylor versus Ulysses S. Grant. Tell us about Taylor, James. James Taylor.
James Taylor, yes. Well, he's a great singer. He had some, How Sweet It Is to Be... Oh, wrong. I'm sorry, wrong Taylor. Zachary Taylor, yes. He was pretty much a lifelong soldier. Did not go to West Point because they didn't have West Point at the time. He was a Southerner. He was from Louisiana. He actually started in Virginia and eventually ended up in Louisiana. He was not a very large man. He was about 5'8", about 170, so about the same size as Grant. He was a commander, a low-level officer in the War of 1812, and of course he went on to be a general, one of the top generals in the Mexican-American War. Later, of course, when he's president, he dies of, probably some kind of digestive disease, typhus.
Was it the cherries and cream that did him in?
Cherries and cream. His sounds like a bad type of ice cream or something. Anyway, or maybe not bad, maybe actually good. But yeah, he got very, very sick and probably had some bad water too. But he was called Old Rough and Ready because he really didn't like military pomp and circumstance. He didn't like fancy uniforms and all that. In fact, most of the time when he was a commanding general, he didn't even wear a uniform. He just wore an old farmer's hat and like a straw hat and just regular civilian clothing. And oftentimes people didn't really believe he was the general until he had to convince them. But so, just a plain fellow, not a fancy guy. He was called Rough and Ready because he was able and willing and able to endure a lot of the same hardships that his soldiers did. Kind of like Andrew Jackson, he didn't live a pampered existence. Here's an interesting story I thought I'd pass along from when he was a junior officer in the War of 1812. He was commanding a very small group of men, just a few dozen men. And they were woken up at midnight when an invading horde of 600 Indians set fire to their camp. And some of his soldiers panicked, and Taylor was asleep, but he wakes up and he told his men, "Taylor never surrenders." And he calmly ordered some of his men to fix the fort's fire-damaged roof, and he told the rest to attack the invaders. And they put out the fire, they repaired the roof, and just a handful of men held off 600 Indians, and by the morning, the fire was gone, the damage was repaired, and the invaders had retreated. And that's actually the first military victory in the War of 1812 for the Americans. I don't even know the name of the battle off the top of my head, but if you know anything about the War of 1812, it got off to a terrible start. The Americans were just whiffing right and left, just losing battle after battle. They had some horrible generals who were really kind of old fossils left over from the Revolutionary War. But Taylor helped rally the troops. And I just like that quote, Taylor never surrenders. So he's rough, he's tough, he's ready, and he's not going to surrender. You're going to have to physically eliminate him from the ring.
Okay, well, let's see if Grant can do that. And on the one hand, when you hear Grant, you think, okay, he's going to make it. He's the hero of the Civil War. He helps the Union Army turn the tide against the Confederacy. Lincoln gives him special commendations. There's all these wonderful fake stories where Lincoln's worried about Grant's drinking of whiskey, which he did quite a bit, although wasn't drunk during battle. Just want to point that out. But when he saw Grant's results on the battlefield, he found out what whiskey Grant was drinking and sent it to the other generals. Almost definitely not true, but great story nonetheless. So when you first hear that, you imagine this powerful, broad-shouldered guy who's going to step on with both fists clenched and punch out his opponents. But as James mentioned in a previous fight, he wasn't a big guy. He was 5'7", and when he entered West Point at 17, he was 5'1", so just 1 inch over the minimum height requirement. He grows during that time period, grows 6 inches by graduation time. But not a big guy, and there's other ironic things about his personality. He could be a little bit squeamish. He couldn't stand the sight of animal blood. Raw steak nauseated him, and he wanted his steak well done. So for all the blood that he shed on the battlefield, quite, a little bit ironic. Okay, but you don't want to hear...
Can I break in and is it okay if Taylor sneaks in some animal blood and just sprays it all over the place?
We have a Carrie thing where there's a bunch of pig blood thrown on him. And so when he starts hearing the voice, they're all going to laugh at you. Then he shuts down. Okay, so that is a tactic that Taylor can bring in. Okay, but everyone, come on. You don't want to hear about his physicality. You want to hear about what he did on the battlefield and what an aggressive general he is. So I looked a little bit at a book. There's a wonderful one by Edward Bonekemper, who's written a lot on the Civil War. And he has a book called Grant and Lee, Victorious American and Vanquished Virginian, where he stacks up Grant and Lee and compares them on a number of different points as battlefield or as generals and commanders and everything else. And in the section where it talks about Grant's aggressiveness, he notes that Grant was very aggressive, maybe not as much as Lee, although Lee could have been aggressive to his detriment, especially when he has less resources at his disposal. One example is Grant's war-ending 1864 Overland Campaign against Lee's army, and this reflects Grant's war-long philosophy that the art of war is simple enough. Find out where your enemy is, get at him as soon as you can, strike him as hard as you can, and often as you can, and keep moving on.
That's brilliant. Why didn't all of our generals just do that?
I know. Hit them and keep hitting them. That, it seems pretty straightforward.
It seems easy to me, I don't know. What's so hard about it?
I should make sense to me. I'll be a general.
Yep.
So, backseat generaling. It's so that was Grant's philosophy. And one historian, Bruce Catton, said, better than any other Northern soldier, better than any other man save Lincoln himself, Grant understood the necessity for bringing the infinite power of the growing nation to bear on the desperate weakness of the brave, romantic, and tragically archaic little nation that opposed it. So, very aggressive in battle, advanced aggressively, creatively, and attacked with vigor, but he avoided suicidal frontal attacks, which is something Lee is criticized for. So, Grant will be aggressive, but he's not going to take stupid risks that, let's say he applies this battlefield philosophy to his one-on-one fight, could serve him very well. And he's aware of the need to damage, destroy, or capture the Confederate army instead of just taking over it geographically. So he is going to battle to the very bitter end for a scorched earth campaign. He's going to bring that scorched earth mindset in his battle against his opposing general, Taylor. Who wins, James?
I'm afraid old Zachary Taylor, old rough and ready, he's not rough and ready enough for Grant. Grant, just due to the things that you mentioned, his stubborn determination, his sneakiness, his willingness to hit hard and hit often, Grant wins quite handily.
All right, and he's going to open up a tenth or more like a fifth of whiskey to celebrate.
Absolutely.
Pick it all down in one gulp. All right, well, that is our, I was about to say Civil War battle, but 19th century battle, I guess we can say.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we have one returning champion for the next fight, LBJ, who took out poor Herbert Hoover. He's going up against Ronald Reagan. Thanks for listening to Presidential Fight Club. If you'd like to download your own printable bracket sheets for each regional tournament so you can guess how the tournament will go, check out presidentialfightclub.com. We'd appreciate it if you could rate and review us on Apple Podcasts as well. Thanks for listening, and may you fight with the stamina of Teddy Roosevelt, the courage of George Washington, and the reach of Abraham Lincoln.